A male officer tore her campaign ribbons off her chest. She was wearing them at his court-martial. The room went silent the moment his hand shot forward. Colonel Hawkins gripped the ribbons pinned to Sergeant Elena Cabrera's chest and ripped them free, scattering pins and fabric across the courtroom floor like shrapnel. Gasps rippled through the gallery. No one in that court-martial chamber had expected the accused to attack the very woman testifying against him. Not here, not in front of two generals and a room full of witnesses. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. Elena didn't flinch. That was the strangest part. Bystanders would later say her face barely moved, as if she'd rehearsed this exact moment in her mind 100 times before it ever happened. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, but her eyes never left his. 3 years earlier, she had served under Hawkins in a forward operating base where decisions were made in seconds and consequences lasted lifetimes. She'd watched him send men into a position he knew was compromised, all to protect his own record. She'd watched soldiers die because of it. And she had spent 3 years building the case that finally brought him here, to this room, in front of the flag and the seal and the silent, watching officers behind the bench. The overhead lights hummed. Dust hung suspended in the thin beam of sunlight slicing through the blinds. Somewhere behind her, a chair creaked as an old colonel shifted his weight, uncomfortable, unwilling to look away. She thought she'd never have to face him again. She was wrong. When the summons arrived weeks earlier, ordering her to testify in person rather than by written statement, Elena had felt her stomach drop. She almost refused. Her therapist had warned her that confronting Hawkins directly might undo months of progress, might reopen wounds she'd only just begun to stitch closed. But somewhere beneath the fear was something harder, something that had kept her moving through deployments and sleepless nights and the quiet, grinding work of building a case against a man 3 ranks above her. It was the memory of Private Doss, 20 years old, calling for his mother in the dirt while Hawkins radioed in a false position report to cover his own mistake. That memory was why she wore the ribbons that morning. Not out of vanity, out of defiance. Every medal on her chest represented a mission she'd survived because she made the calls Hawkins refused to make. She wanted him to see them. She wanted him to remember exactly who was sitting across from him when the verdict came down. He saw them, all right, and something in him broke. The murmur in the gallery rose to a low, uneasy hum as the ribbons hit the floor, scattering blue and red and gold across the polished wood. A young private near the back stood halfway out of his seat before a superior's hand pulled him back down. The presiding general banged his gavel, but for a moment, no one moved. The silence afterward was heavier than the outburst itself, the kind of silence that makes a room feel smaller, makes every breath sound too loud. Hawkins's face was crimson, his jaw working, spit at the corner of his mouth. "You have no right," he snarled, "to wear those in front of me." As if her medals were an insult. As if her survival, her competence, her refusal to break was somehow a crime against his own fragile authority. Here lies the moral weight the room couldn't ignore. Was Elena wrong to wear those ribbons, knowing it might provoke him? Was justice about proving guilt, or about proving something deeper, that she would not be erased, not by his rage, not by his rank, not by 3 years of silence the army had asked her to keep? The gallery seemed to hold its breath, uncertain which of them to pity and which to condemn. Then came the moment nobody expected. Elena bent down, slow and deliberate, and began collecting the scattered ribbons from the floor. One by one, she picked them up, brushing off the dust, her hands steady now in a way they hadn't been moments before. The room watched in stillness as she rose, walked to the evidence table, and placed the broken ribbons beside the case files, beside the photographs, the radio logs, the sworn statements of the men who never came home. "These," she said, her voice cutting clean through the silence, "are Exhibit 41. Let the record show what he did the moment he realized he couldn't intimidate me into silence." A pause. Then, from somewhere near the back, a single soldier began to clap. Another joined. Within seconds, the gallery rose, not in chaos, but in quiet, unified respect, the kind of applause that doesn't celebrate victory so much as recognize courage. The presiding general did not silence it. He let it happen, watching Hawkins being led out under guard, his shoulders finally, visibly, defeated. Elena stood alone at the evidence table, ribbons in hand, the sunlight catching the torn threads still hanging from the pins. She thought of Private Doss. She thought of every soldier whose name never made the news. And for the first time in 3 years, she let herself breathe. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes, the truest medal a person can wear isn't pinned to their chest at all. It's the quiet, unshakable will to stand back up every time someone tries to tear them down. If this story moved you, don't scroll past without telling me. Drop a comment and let me know how it made you feel. Subscribe if you believe courage like Elena's deserves to be remembered, and stay close, because the next story might just be the one that changes how you see the people who serve in silence.